Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the Real Threat channel. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. Today, we are going to be discussing the film located at Elia, Ali kan filmen kitaiske. Filmysnava papkan, Trois Full, Bao Feng Yan, Noladin, Storm I, Noladin Yang Mi, Zhang Binbin, Liu Ruilin, Dai Se, Wang Dong, Wang Xiao, Shi Liang, Shi Jingming, Zhang Shen, Zhu Xin, Liao Jingsheng, Yi Daqian, Yo-Yo Duba Juchang, Yo-Yo television series exclusive, 720p H.264, MP4. The opening scenes immediately plunge us into the high-stakes world of corporate espionage and cutting-edge cybersecurity. We meet the protagonists, individuals deeply embedded in this shadowy conflict, whose professional lives are as intense as their personal struggles. One key figure, a brilliant but perhaps emotionally guarded security expert, is introduced through a tense operation. This character, much like the disciplined roles often played by Yang Mi in her varied filmography, exudes a quiet competence that masks deep underlying commitment. The narrative establishes the central conflict early on. A powerful technology firm is under relentless attack by sophisticated foreign entities seeking to steal invaluable intellectual property, specifically a next-generation detection system. The initial tension revolves around a critical security breach. We see the team mobilizing, displaying the kind of synchronized action one might expect from operatives trained under rigorous government oversight, reminiscent of the precision demanded in many high-budget Chinese action dramas. Zhang Binbin's character, often portraying intense, focused partners in on-screen romances, here serves as the necessary operational counterpart to the lead, bringing a different, perhaps more grounded, expertise to the fieldwork. Their dynamic, even in these early professional encounters, hints at a past connection or a necessary reliance on one another that transcends mere partnership. As the investigation deepens, the characters are forced to confront layers of deceit. The stolen technology isn't just data. It represents national security interests. This emphasis on patriotic duty and technological sovereignty is a common thread in contemporary Chinese cinema, grounding the personal stakes within a broader societal context. The espionage is depicted not just through digital maneuvering, but through physical surveillance and careful deduction, drawing on classic spy thriller tropes, but updating them with modern technological jargon. We see flashbacks, or perhaps carefully curated pieces of information that begin to illuminate the personal histories of the team members. Their dedication to this work often stems from personal loss or a deeply ingrained sense of justice. The film takes time to show the toll this life takes, the constant vigilance, the strained relationships outside the professional bubble. The intensity required to maintain this level of focus mirrors the rigorous demands placed on actors who transition seamlessly between commercial hits and more serious, demanding roles, requiring immense mental stamina. A significant part of the plot involves tracking down the mole within their own organization or a closely allied entity. This internal betrayal adds a layer of paranoia that heightens the drama. Every interaction becomes suspect. The supporting cast, featuring established actors like Shi Liang and Wang Dong, brings gravitas to the procedural elements, portraying the senior leadership who must balance operational success with political maneuvering. Their presence anchors the narrative, ensuring that the pursuit of the stolen code remains tethered to real-world consequences. The climax builds as the team zeroes in on the perpetrators overseas. It is a race against time, complicated by the fact that the attackers are not mere amateurs, but are backed by substantial resources and high-level intelligence. The final confrontation, whether digital or physical, is framed as a triumph of dedication and superior intellect over brute force and greed. The resolution, while satisfying the immediate need to recover the technology and expose the conspiracy, leaves the audience with a sense of the ongoing nature of this silent war. A suggestion that for these dedicated professionals, the storm eye is never truly calm. Their commitment remains a quiet promise to protect what is theirs. The initial skirmishes against the unseen enemy establish a rhythm of near misses and frantic problem solving. Yang Mi's character, the lead operative, navigates the digital battlefield with an almost surgical precision. Her past, hinted at through brief, sharp recollections, suggests rigorous training, possibly in some specialized elite academy. The kind of background that forges resilience, but often sacrifices emotional openness. She carries the weight of responsibility, her expressions tight, betraying the constant internal calculus required to stay ahead of adversaries who think several moves in advance. This meticulousness echoes the careful framing and high production values seen in many of her mainstream successes, where visual perfection often mirrors thematic control. Zhang Binbin's field operative complements her intensity with a more immediate, tactical responsiveness. When they are forced into close proximity during a tense extraction, perhaps retrieving a compromised server or securing a vulnerable asset in a bustling urban environment, the unspoken history between them surfaces. There is a flicker of shared hardship, a recognition of the sacrifices made to maintain this double life. Their partnership is less about romance initially and more about mutual survival, a necessary synergy built upon successful missions where failure meant exposure, or worse. He embodies the reliable frontline support, the steady hand when the digital infrastructure buckles. The narrative expertly weaves the technical jargon of coding and network intrusion with genuine human stress. We see the exhaustion in the eyes of the young analysts working grueling hours, fueled by caffeine and national pride. The stakes are continually raised as the stolen algorithm proves more crucial than initially understood. It's not just a patent, it's the key to future defense capabilities. This elevated significance casts the entire team not just as corporate protectors, but as silent guardians of the nation's technological edge. The environment around them, the sterile labs, the secure command centers, feels almost claustrophobic, emphasizing how little privacy these heroes possess, even within their own safe spaces. The introduction of the internal threat, the suspected mole, shifts the emotional texture from external pressure to internal suspicion. Trust, the bedrock of any high-stakes team, begins to erode. Scenes dedicated to surveillance of their own colleagues are riddled with quiet tension. Who is compromised? The paranoia affects decision-making, forcing the main duo to operate with increased secrecy, sometimes even misleading their direct superiors, leading to fascinating internal conflict. This mirrors the complexities often explored in dramas where loyalty is tested. The actors must convey deep suspicion without tipping their hand to the audience too early, maintaining that delicate balance of performance. As the hunt leads them overseas, perhaps to a glittering but morally bankrupt international hub, the visual scope widens, contrasting the rigid discipline of their home base with the chaos of international intrigue. The physical challenges mirror the intellectual ones. They are hunted as much as they are hunting. The film portrays these action sequences not as mindless brawls, but as calculated evasions, where every piece of environmental knowledge is used as a weapon or shield. The emotional core remains the drive to protect the integrity of their work and, by extension, their country's future. When the final confrontation nears, it's less about physical victory and more about securing the definitive digital evidence, a testament to the film's dedication to honoring the intelligence aspect of the espionage thriller. The resolution provides closure for the immediate threat, but the weary glances exchanged between the leads suggest that for those standing in the eye of the storm, the vigilance is perpetual. They have won this battle, but the nature of their commitment ensures the war continues just beneath the surface of everyday life. The weight of the recovered intelligence settles upon the team not with triumphant celebration, but with a profound, bone-deep weariness. The physical toll of the overseas pursuit is etched onto their faces, a landscape of missed meals and sleepless nights. Young Mi's character, having executed the final countermeasure to neutralize the foreign acquisition attempt, finally allows a sliver of vulnerability to show, quickly masked by the necessity of debriefing. Her motivation, which the film has gently unfolded, is rooted in an early professional failure where underestimating an opponent led to catastrophic data loss, an event that solidified her commitment to absolute preemptive perfection. This past trauma dictates her present intensity, making every successful firewall a small penance paid. Zhang Binbin's operative handles the cleanup and immediate extraction, his focus purely practical. His moments of introspection often happen during the long, silent drives between secure locations, where he contemplates the fragile nature of the normalcy they fight to protect. His background, perhaps involving deep undercover work or a difficult family situation that forced him into this high-risk career path, gives him a stoic resilience. When he shares a brief, unguarded moment with his lead, perhaps over lukewarm rations in a temporary safe house, the emotion is conveyed through shared silence and the recognition of mutual sacrifice, a powerful shorthand developed over years of shared danger. The internal mole, once exposed, provides a jarring illustration of how ideological differences or mere financial desperation can corrupt even the most vetted personnel. The capture scene itself is meticulously choreographed, emphasizing the psychological defeat of the traitor rather than brute force. It highlights a key theme. The modern battlefield is often waged in the minds and loyalties of individuals. The supporting ensemble, particularly the seasoned veterans like Xiliang, handle the moral implications of rooting out the betrayal with the appropriate grim resignation. They've seen this before, and it never gets easier. Their counsel often pulls the younger leads back from the brink of overreaction, reminding them that procedure must prevail even when emotion screams for vengeance. The technological intricacies, while complex, serve always to heighten the human drama. The specific nature of the stolen system, perhaps involving quantum encryption or advanced drone guidance, is framed as an existential threat, making the success feel monumental. The film avoids the typical Hollywood explosion-heavy finale, instead focusing on the quiet securing of the final data packet, a moment of digital triumph that feels earned through sheer intellectual marathon. The environment shifts back to their home base, but it feels subtly altered. The success has bought them time, but the knowledge of how close they came to failure leaves a permanent scar. As the closing shots linger, we see the protagonists not celebrating a victory party, but returning to their isolated apartments, the silence of their personal lives deafening after the constant communication of the mission. They are heroes, defined by their absence from ordinary life. The final image might place the lead character staring out at the cityscape, the storm having passed, but the awareness of lurking threats remaining, a deep, a biting professionalism that precludes true rest. Their commitment is not a job. It is an identity forged in high-pressure secrecy, readying themselves for the next unseen conflict that will inevitably arise from the shadows of global technology. The period immediately following the successful recovery of the critical technology is characterized by a mandatory but awkward return to normalcy. For the operatives, this transition is jarring. They move from the hyper-alert state of active pursuit, where every sensory input was vital, back into the mundane rhythm of bureaucratic oversight and internal review. This phase, though less visually dramatic, is emotionally taxing, forcing them to reconcile the life or death stakes they just faced with the routine nature of paperwork and mandatory psychological evaluations. Young Mi's character finds the administrative downtime particularly grating. She engages with the review process with the same exhaustive detail she applies to code breaking, determined to find every flaw in the defense that allowed the breach in the first place. This relentless self-scrutiny breeds isolation. She avoids socializing, viewing any moment not dedicated to bolstering their defenses as a potential vulnerability. Her apartment becomes a sterile sanctuary, filled with screens displaying defensive monitoring software rather than personal artifacts. This intensity mirrors the dedication often required of actors immersed in physically and mentally demanding roles, where the discipline required to maintain peak performance can bleed into every waking hour. Jung Binbin's operative attempts a more overt reintegration into the civilian world, perhaps trying to mend a strained relationship with a non-security connected family member or friend. These attempts are often clumsy. He struggles with the trivialities of everyday conversation, unable to switch off the pattern recognition honed during surveillance. A scene depicting a simple dinner out becomes a masterclass in quiet tension. As he constantly scans the room, his posture betraying his training, while his companion notices only his distraction. His efforts are driven by the underlying desire to prove that the sacrifices they make are ultimately in service of preserving the mundane world. Yet he remains fundamentally an outsider to it. The film delves into the political aftermath, where the success of the team is leveraged by their superiors for bureaucratic advantage. We see scenes in high-level government offices, where the narrative shifts from saving the code to controlling the official story. The presence of seasoned actors in these roles adds a necessary layer of political maneuvering. They treat the successful operation as a chess move rather than a salvation. This political dimension reminds the audience that the technological war is inextricably linked to the power struggles within their own national structures, demanding a different kind of vigilance from the heroes. The ability to navigate the currents of patronage and ambition without becoming entangled. Furthermore, the film introduces subtle long-term consequences stemming from their covert actions overseas. Perhaps a compromised foreign agent surfaces, leading to minor, untraceable repercussions that only the core team recognizes. These echoes from the past act as a slow-burning anxiety, a promise that their victory was temporary. The final moments of this segment focus on the subtle recalibration of their defense posture. The team members do not rest. They merely shift their focus to the next anticipated vector of attack, their shared glances speaking volumes about their understanding. In this world, the true reward is not retirement, but simply surviving to fight the next inevitable storm. The quiet period following the resolution of the major crisis is less a reprieve and more a tense recalibration. The weight of having looked directly into the abyss of national security failure has subtly altered the team's internal calculus. They move through the headquarters like ghosts, proficiently executing standard protocols, yet fundamentally disconnected from the superficial calm of the office environment. Young Mi's operative undertakes an unauthorized deep dive into the recovered system's core architecture. She is driven by the chilling realization that the initial breach was too easy, suggesting an underlying persistent vulnerability the enemy knows about but hasn't exploited yet. This obsessive need for complete structural integrity is a hallmark of deeply committed professionals. Much like an actor who refuses to settle for a technically sound performance, when emotional truth is attainable, she demands perfection. Her interactions with subordinates are brief, sharp directives, devoid of unnecessary pleasantries, as she views any deviation from efficiency as a potential security loophole waiting to be exploited by the next wave of attackers. Zhang Binbin's character, tasked with maintaining field readiness, channels his restlessness into rigorous physical training. These scenes, often filmed in dimly lit, isolated gyms, emphasize his sheer endurance. His internal conflict manifests as a struggle to appear normal during necessary public appearances related to the success of their mission. At one function, surrounded by congratulatory officials, his focus is entirely elsewhere, tracking the exit routes, cataloging the security flaws in the venue's perimeter. The audience senses his profound loneliness. He is performing the role of a successful agent while feeling entirely unmoored from the societal benefits he is securing. The subtle, almost imperceptible tremor in his hand when pouring a celebratory drink betrays the residual stress that routine tasks cannot erase. The narrative introduces a new, almost administrative threat. A review board intent on understanding the procedural anomalies that arose during the chaotic pursuit. This forces the heroes into a delicate dance of partial truths and necessary omissions, protecting operational secrets under the guise of compliance. This political maneuvering is handled with the subtle gravity that veteran actors bring to nuanced roles. They must appear transparent while remaining utterly opaque to unauthorized scrutiny. This internal political pressure is almost as exhausting as the foreign espionage, as it forces the team to expend energy managing perception rather than defending against actual threats. A recurring motif during this lull is the concept of shadows. The heroes realize that even with the code secured, the enemy network has simply retreated, not been destroyed. They see the faint outlines of new patterns emerging in background noise, a slow-motion recognition that the war is continuous and requires endless patience. The film emphasizes that their greatest tool is not the newest encryption software, but their own unwavering, almost pathological dedication to vigilance. The final moments of this segment show the two leads briefly meeting in a secure underground parking garage, the only place they allow themselves unmonitored conversation. There is no declaration of affection, only a shared, heavy acknowledgement of the unspoken burden they carry, a silent pact to remain vigilant because the alternative is unthinkable. They depart separately, melting back into the complex machinery of national defense, ready for the next inevitable escalation. The mandated period of administrative entanglement soon yields to the unmistakable tremor of a new, more insidious threat. The quiet surveillance they had imposed on their enemies inevitably circles back, revealing that the previous victory was merely the elimination of a skirmish force. Yang Mi's operative intercepts fragments of encrypted chatter that suggests the adversary has shifted tactics, moving away from direct, large-scale data theft toward a strategy of systemic destabilization, targeting infrastructure rather than intellectual property alone. This new goal demands an entirely different skill set, anticipating cascading failures across national networks. Her focus tightens. The intellectual challenge is immense, demanding an almost intuitive leap across vast digital landscapes. She finds a grim satisfaction in this complexity, as it allows her to fully immerse herself using the precision honed in her early, formative career moments, the ones where a single miscalculation meant public exposure, to now safeguard the unseen backbone of the nation. Zhang Binbin's operative is drawn into the physical reconnaissance needed to support this new digital hunt. The targets of the suspected sabotage are dispersed geographically, requiring him to operate under increasingly thin cover in seemingly ordinary locations: power substations, transit hubs, remote server farms. The disguise required for this prolonged immersion into civilian life chafes at his finely tuned senses. He experiences moments of near breakdown where the mundane noise of traffic or casual conversation threatens to overwhelm the signals he needs to filter. His acting here is of necessity subtle. The slight hesitation before answering a simple question, the way his eyes constantly map egress points in a crowded cafe. This contrast between the necessity of appearing ordinary and the internal reality of constant danger provides the essential tension in his character arc, reflecting the challenges faced by performers who must convincingly portray normalcy while undergoing intense physical preparation for action sequences. The core emotional toll this time manifests as growing impatience with the established hierarchy. The senior figures, while supportive, often struggle to grasp the speed and abstract nature of this new threat. A pivotal scene involves the team briefing the directors, where the younger agents must translate complex algorithmic warfare into terms understandable to political leadership, a task fraught with the danger of oversimplification. The frustration is palpable. They feel the clock ticking while the system insists on procedure. Xu Liang and the older guard convey the exhaustion of having fought this type of battle repeatedly. They understand the necessity of patience, a quality the younger agents, burning with the immediacy of their recent success, struggle to maintain. The film deepens the personal connection between the two leads as they are forced to rely on each other for validation and emotional grounding, often sharing encrypted messages intended only for their eyes, bypassing official channels entirely. These communications are stark, stripped of pretense, revealing a mutual recognition of the sacrifice inherent in their path. They are bound not by typical romantic entanglement, but by the shared knowledge of what it means to constantly operate without a safety net. This silent partnership becomes the film's emotional anchor, suggesting that in the most extreme environments, human connection is reduced to its most essential, functional form. The climax of this section isn't a single explosive event, but a race to deploy a countermeasure designed to harden the national infrastructure against the coordinated attacks. It's a complex ballet between code deployment and physical protection of the deployment nodes. The final sequence is tense, relying on tight close-ups of the operatives' faces, reflecting the light of monitors, punctuated by swift, decisive physical actions to ward off the few human elements sent by the enemy to disrupt the process. When the final packet locks into place, securing the network, the victory is quiet, almost anticlimactic to an outside observer. Yet, for the characters, it's a massive exhale. They've stared down systemic collapse, and for now, they've held the line, readying themselves for the inevitable moment when the enemy finds the next seam to exploit. The aftermath of successfully defending the infrastructure brings a fleeting moment of mandated reflection, quickly overshadowed by the gnawing realization that systemic destabilization is a war of attrition, not isolated battles. Young Mi's operative feels the corrosive effect of this protracted conflict most acutely. Her dedication borders on the ascetic. She refuses any official commendation, viewing public recognition as a dangerous distraction that could invite closer scrutiny from the very forces they are fighting. Instead, she immerses herself in post-mortem analysis, meticulously detailing every near miss during the infrastructure defense. This rigorous self-auditing reveals a disturbing pattern. The enemy's penetration methods suggest deep, long-term intelligence gathering, indicating that their internal security apparatus has been compromised at a level far beyond the previous mole they rooted out. The environment around her processing stations seems to hum with suppressed urgency, reflecting the high-stakes intellectual choreography required of her role, akin to a virtuoso musician practicing scales until the motions become instinctual. Jung Binbin's field specialist finds his duties morphing into a delicate counterintelligence game within their own walls. He is tasked with quietly observing high-ranking officials and allied technology partners, looking for the sophisticated, systemic compromises that evade standard digital monitoring. This requires operating in spheres previously deemed untouchable, forcing him into uncomfortable proximity with powerful figures who mask deep corruption beneath polished veneers. His frustration mounts as he observes genuine patriots being unwittingly leveraged by the deeper enemy networks. His training, often involving extended periods of isolation and observation, allows him to see the nuanced tells of deceit. But the ethical tightrope he walks, knowing who is compromised but lacking the immediate proof to act, places immense strain on his stoicism. There are moments where he almost crosses a line, tempted to intervene physically rather than wait for the slow grind of bureaucratic evidence gathering, a testament to the personal cost of maintaining operational distance. The narrative delves into the psychological fragmentation experienced by the team. Their shared victories are now tainted by the knowledge of persistent, hidden threats. Wang Xiao's character, perhaps an analyst vital to interpreting the enemy's coded communications, begins showing signs of burnout, manifesting as sudden, jarring outbursts of anxiety during quiet moments. The film uses these moments to underscore that continuous exposure to malicious intent warps the human psyche. The senior leadership, represented by the unflappable composure of figures like Dai Si, steps in, not with reprimands, but with carefully curated downtime schedules, forcing brief respites that are often counterproductive, making the quiet feel louder and more dangerous than the noise of conflict. The focus shifts to identifying the architects behind the systemic attack, a shadowy multinational consortium that views national security infrastructure as merely another market to control. This elevates the conflict from espionage to techno-economic warfare. The pursuit necessitates a daring infiltration into one of the consortium's seemingly impenetrable hubs, likely located in a cosmopolitan city that masks its true nature behind a facade of legitimate commerce. This upcoming mission is framed as the most dangerous yet, requiring a complete fusion of the digital and physical expertise the team has painstakingly developed. As the preparations for this major operation commence, the unspoken bond between the leads deepens into a shared, grim fatalism. They exchange looks that communicate operational plans without a single word, a language forged in survival. There is a quiet understanding that this mission might not result in a clean extraction or a celebratory debriefing. It may simply be the final act of drawing the enemy into the open. Their commitment transcends duty now. It is a mutual reliance against an overwhelming tide, setting the stage for an operation where success is defined not by accolades, but by mere existence in the aftermath. The preparation for the deep infiltration mission strips away any remaining illusion of routine or safety. The team operates under extreme compartmentalization, a necessity born from the pervasive nature of the unseen enemy. Youngmi's character takes the lead in crafting the digital spearhead for the operation. She spends days immersed in the simulated environment of the target consortium's defenses, her face illuminated by cold blue light, seeking the single, minuscule flaw that will allow their entry. This phase highlights her almost inhuman capacity for sustained, high-level concentration, a trait that makes her invaluable but renders her emotionally inaccessible. Her movements become economical, every gesture purposeful, echoing the disciplined training she must have undergone. The kind of rigorous preparation that shapes a legend but carves away at personal connection. She views the encryption not as an obstacle, but as a personal challenge, a direct conversation with the opposing mind. Zhang Binbin's operative is meticulously groomed for the physical insertion phase. His cover story for the overseas deployment is elaborate, a complex tapestry woven from fabricated credentials and carefully planted background noise. He embodies the necessary duality, mastering the art of appearing utterly unremarkable, while internally maintaining a constant state of readiness for explosive escalation. During their final pre-mission briefing, away from the primary command center and deep within a secure, anonymous safe house, the subtle shift in their dynamic is evident. It's no longer just professional respect. It's the profound reliance of two people who trust each other with their very lives, a connection forged in the white-hot crucible of near disasters. The dialogue between them is terse, focused entirely on contingencies, yet their shared glances convey volumes about the personal risk they are willingly undertaking. The film dedicates significant time to showcasing the technological sophistication of the target consortium. They aren't just stealing data, they are building alternative shadow economies powered by stolen core technologies. This realization fuels the team's urgency. They are fighting not just for the present, but against a future dictated by unchecked technological avarice. The technical exposition, while dense, is grounded by the visible pressure on the analysts, like Ning Xin's character, who must synthesize overwhelming amounts of data into actionable intelligence under crushing deadlines. Their exhaustion serves as a tangible representation of the unseen burdens carried by those who defend the digital frontiers. As the team deploys overseas, the atmosphere shifts to one of heightened tension and sensory overload. The target location is portrayed as opulent and overwhelmingly complex, a perfect environment for hiding clandestine operations in plain sight. The initial stages of infiltration are executed with breathtaking precision, a blend of flawless digital access mirroring physical movement through restricted zones. Wang Dong's role, perhaps as the operational coordinator providing remote support, becomes crucial, feeding them real-time tactical adjustments as they navigate unexpected internal security patrols that are far more aggressive than predicted. The insertion reveals the extent of the consortium's reach. They encounter not just automated defenses, but human operatives who are clearly trained and morally compromised, dedicated mercenaries of information warfare. The confrontation is sharp and pragmatic. The heroes prioritize objective completion over prolonged engagement, demonstrating the disciplined, mission-first mentality that defines their unit. When they finally gain access to the central data vault, the ensuing sequence is less about brute force and more about a desperate, high stakes race against self destruct protocols designed to erase the evidence permanently. The ultimate success hinges on Yang Mi's character executing a near impossible multi threaded hack, while Zhang Binbin physically secures the core server against sabotage attempts, a sequence demanding absolute synchronization and unwavering faith in the partner's ability to hold their end of the fragile plan. The victory is secured not with a bang, but with the quiet confirmation that the data, the proof of the consortium's crimes, is safely transferred, leaving the immediate physical danger behind them as they prepare for the political fallout of exposing such a powerful global entity. The successful extraction of the incriminating data from the consortium's hub leaves the team physically drained, but intellectually vindicated. The triumph, however, is immediately tempered by the realization that possessing the evidence is only the first and perhaps least dangerous step. Exposing such a powerful, globally entrenched entity invites massive retaliation, not through direct military confrontation, but through calculated, legal, and public character assassination. The focus abruptly shifts from digital warfare to information control, a battle fought in the media and the halls of international jurisprudence. Yang Mi's operative is tasked with securing the digital payload, ensuring its integrity remains untainted as it is prepared for controlled release. She treats the data as a fragile, vital organ, working in near isolation to build an impenetrable shield around it. Her demeanor hardens as she anticipates the inevitable counterattacks aimed at discrediting the source, herself and her team. This phase tests her ability to remain emotionally detached while her professional reputation is being systematically targeted by sophisticated propaganda machines. The film shows her studying the psychological profiles of those who will attempt to tear down their credibility, recognizing the familiar patterns of calculated deceit she has fought against for years. It's a battle of narrative control, demanding a strategic patience that contrasts sharply with the rapid action of the previous mission. Zhang Binbin's field operative transitions into a crucial protective role, tasked with securing the physical safety of the key witnesses and internal allies who collaborated with them, many of whom are now in mortal danger due to their cooperation. This demands quick, clandestine movements across national borders and the establishment of deep cover safe houses, operations fraught with the risk of compromise at every turn. His experiences on the ground illustrate the moral ambiguity that haunts this line of work. He must sometimes trust individuals with questionable pasts because they possess the necessary resources or knowledge to keep true collaborators safe. His growing weariness is palpable. The strain of constantly anticipating betrayal from unexpected quarters begins to chip away at his practiced stoicism. He feels the loneliness of the protector acutely, knowing that the safety he provides is temporary and conditional. The political maneuvering, overseen by seasoned figures like Shi Liang, intensifies. The government faces immense international pressure to suppress the evidence, forcing the agency into a delicate balancing act between national security imperatives and diplomatic necessity. Scenes depicting high-level negotiations are charged with tension, where every word is measured for its potential to either expose or protect the core mission. The directors must navigate this minefield, understanding that the team's success could trigger economic fallout far exceeding the initial threat of stolen technology. The narrative uses the impending media reveal to heighten the suspense. The team knows that once the data is public, the true war, the one for public perception and political survival, will begin. A significant emotional beat occurs when the leads manage a brief, unmonitored communication, not about the mission, but a fleeting acknowledgement of the personal cost. It's a moment of shared vulnerability that reinforces their bond, suggesting that this shared experience has created a familial unit stronger than any blood tie. They are tethered by mutual sacrifice. The concluding action of this segment involves the controlled release of the information. It is not a chaotic data dump, but a strategically timed release that maximizes the impact on the consortium's legitimacy. As the news breaks, the ensuing global fallout is immediately reflected in subtle shifts within their own headquarters. Increased security, nervous phone calls, and a palpable sense of external pressure bearing down on the agency. The heroes, having delivered the decisive blow, retreat into the shadows once more, understanding that while they have wounded the dragon, they have also made themselves a primary target. Their next mission will not be to attack, but simply to survive the inevitable counteroffensive aimed directly at dismantling their unit. The fallout from the data release is precisely the controlled chaos the team anticipated, yet its sheer scale proves overwhelming in its new, non-digital form. The consortium, wounded but far from defeated, deploys its considerable influence to initiate a global smear campaign. This shifts the battlefield entirely into the realm of public perception and internal politics, demanding a different kind of endurance from the operatives. Young Mi's lead character finds herself at the epicenter of the disinformation war. Her past operational successes are twisted into evidence of reckless overreach and unauthorized international operations. She fights back not by arguing, but by providing meticulous, unassailable counter-evidence, a process that feels like trying to halt a flood with a sieve. Her focus becomes defensive, driven by a chilling clarity. If they can break the public trust in the agency, the consortium wins regardless of the original data's veracity. This constant need to justify their existence exhausts her, leading to moments where her trademark composure falters, betrayed by the deep lines etched around her eyes. Lines that speak to sleepless nights spent sifting legitimate threats from manufactured noise. Her inspiration is no longer purely patriotic. It is now deeply personal, a defense of the very identity she has built in service. Zhang Binbin's operative is forced into the uncomfortable role of guardian and public defender for the team's senior leadership. As key figures face intense governmental scrutiny and calls for resignation, he must use his field skills for high-level protective detail in domestic settings, shadowing powerful allies and uncovering the subtle threats planted by the consortium's domestic proxies. This requires him to operate among the very people who are publicly denouncing his agency, masking his intense scrutiny behind an air of professional deference. His internal frustration boils over during a tense meeting where he must listen to accusations against his team without responding. The restraint required is enormous, showcasing the profound emotional discipline required of those who must remain loyal to the system even when it turns against them. The audience senses his longing to revert to the clear-cut directives of external combat rather than this murky internal conflict. The narrative explores the impact on the supporting cast. Analysts like Ning Xin, who were lauded as heroes weeks prior, are now subjected to intense scrutiny regarding their background checks and loyalty oaths. The pervasive atmosphere of suspicion starts to breed genuine discord within the ranks, mirroring the internal paranoia seen in classic Cold War espionage narratives where self-preservation begins to trump unit cohesion. The veterans, like Shi Liang, struggle to hold the fracturing team together, their wisdom now focused on managing morale and preventing internal leaks rather than stopping external attacks. The consortium, realizing they cannot immediately destroy the core evidence, shifts focus to destabilizing the team's leadership structure. They engineer a situation that forces the agency director into an impossible choice, pitting the safety of one key team member against the security of critical infrastructure data yet to be analyzed. This forces Yang Mi and Zhang Binbin to act outside established protocol once more, operating independently with minimal support, relying entirely on their established silent synergy. The climax of this phase is a desperate, calculated risk taken by the leads to secure an off-site backup of crucial evidence that could clear their names. This final act is less about grand explosions and more about a tight, focused infiltration into a supposedly neutral, high-profile location, perhaps an international conference or a supposedly neutral embassy liaison office. It's a testament to their enduring partnership. They move as one, their actions fluid and complementary, proving that even under the most intense political pressure, their operational trust remains the agency's most formidable and most human asset. They emerge successful, having secured their final shield, but the victory feels heavy. They have won this round, but they know the war against pervasive, well-funded influence is far from over. They are now officially operating on the fringes, masters of the shadows they once commanded from the center. The inaugural episode of Storm Eye immediately immerses the viewer in a world where the digital and the tangible collide, establishing a taut atmosphere characteristic of high-stakes espionage thrillers. The pacing is deliberate, perhaps reflecting the methodical nature of cybersecurity investigations, focusing more on establishing character dynamics and the pervasive threat of invisible enemies than on immediate explosive action. Central to this initial installment is the complex relationship between the protagonists, played by Yang Mi and Zhang Binbin. Yang Mi's portrayal, likely of the highly skilled operative Tang Jing, carries the weight of past experiences, suggested through subtle body language and an air of guarded professionalism. Her career trajectory, often featuring roles where she navigates intricate professional and personal challenges, as seen in her work on productions like 10 Years Late or Eternal Love, lends credibility to her on-screen competence. Here, she embodies the intelligent, somewhat emotionally distant expert, essential for operating in the shadow world of cyber warfare. Zhang Binbin's character, presumably Ma Shang, complements this perfectly. His energy seems more outwardly adaptable, though beneath the surface lies a deep dedication to the mission. Actors like Zhang Binbin, who have successfully portrayed both romantic leads and more serious, duty-bound figures, bring a necessary duality to the partnership. The inherent tension arising from their shared, presumably complicated history, a classic trope in spy narratives, is palpable even in these early scenes. The narrative hints that their reunion is not purely coincidental, suggesting a history that will either anchor or jeopardize their current objectives. The production quality itself speaks volumes about the intended scope of the series. The visual language employs cool tones and high-contrast lighting, visually reinforcing the themes of secrecy and surveillance. The technological aspects, while perhaps stylized for dramatic effect, aim to ground the series in contemporary concerns regarding data security and corporate espionage. This nod to modern technological anxiety is a significant draw for contemporary audiences, especially given the real-world proliferation of sophisticated cyber threats. The supporting cast, featuring accomplished actors such as Liu Ruilin and Daisy begins to build the necessary infrastructure around the core duo. The inclusion of veterans like Wang Dong and Wang Xiao suggests a depth of layered command structure, providing both authoritative oversight and potential friction points within the organization. This ensemble approach suggests that the central conflict will extend beyond simple hacking attempts. It will involve organizational politics and competing loyalties, a complexity that benefits from experienced performers who can convey layered motivations efficiently. Inspiration for a series like this often draws from the intersection of real-world intelligence operations and the high-octane fictionalizations popularized by international cinema, while grounding itself firmly within the contemporary Chinese technological landscape. The ethical gray areas inherent in national security work, balancing absolute secrecy with personal morality, are implicitly set up as the primary philosophical battleground for the season. The first episode successfully lays the groundwork, establishing the players, the high stakes involved in protecting national digital infrastructure, and the emotional baggage that ensures the inevitable operational hazards will be amplified by personal conflict. The deliberate slowness of the opening acts as an amplifier for the underlying anxiety. It's the quiet before the digital storm, focusing the viewer's attention squarely on the protagonist's micro-expressions. Yang Mi's Tang Jing moves through the sterile, technologically advanced environments with an economy of motion that speaks volumes of her training. There is a visible discipline to her posture. She is a fortress of professionalism, yet the slight tightening around her eyes when certain familiar names or codes are mentioned betrays a vulnerability she desperately tries to suppress. This emotional repression is compelling, drawing upon the kind of nuanced portrayal audiences appreciated in her more grounded, dramatic roles, where the stakes felt intensely personal despite the grand scale. We understand instinctively that her competence is a shield, perhaps protecting her from past failures or betrayals hinted at by the atmosphere surrounding her reappearance. Zhang Binbin's Ma Shang, conversely, seems to operate with a practiced charm, a mask designed to disarm both targets and colleagues. If Tang Jing is the ice, Ma Shang is the skillfully controlled flame. His interactions, even in these initial briefing scenes, possess a subtle undertone of maneuvering, suggesting he is always assessing angles, always operating on multiple levels. This duality is key to his appeal. He must appear trustworthy enough to be integrated into sensitive operations while maintaining the necessary distance required of a deep operative. The on-screen chemistry, even when simply sharing a tense glance across a conference table, hints at a deep, unresolved history, a shared crucible that forged their skills but perhaps fractured their relationship. This personal history is the emotional tether that will inevitably complicate the mission parameters, transforming a straightforward cyber defense operation into a deeply personal tightrope walk. The series wisely employs visual metaphors for the digital intrusion, close-ups on flickering screens, data streams rendered with sleek, minimalist graphics, and the omnipresent sense of being watched, either by cameras or unseen hackers, create an environment saturated with paranoia. This aesthetic choice is crucial. In a world where the enemy is code and motive, the environment itself must convey threat. The visual language echoes contemporary anxieties fueled by high-profile data breaches, giving the fictional conflict a very real resonance. The introduction of the wider team, though brief in this premiere, suggests a hierarchical structure ripe for internal conflict. The presence of established character actors elevates the procedural elements immediately. For instance, Wang Dong's bearing suggests a commanding officer whose trust, once earned, is absolute, but whose patience for procedural deviations is thin. This grounding in solid, experienced acting prevents the technological exposition from becoming dry. The human reactions to the technological pressures drive the drama. We anticipate that the inherent secrecy of their work will breed mistrust, and the seasoned supporting cast is perfectly positioned to embody these competing loyalties. The unwavering duty to the state versus the personal cost of such devotion. Storm Eye seems poised to explore not just the defense of national infrastructure, but the emotional toll exacted upon those chosen to stand on the digital front lines. The foundational tension established in this first episode doesn't just stem from the external cyber threats. It is deeply rooted in the psychological landscape inhabited by Tang Jing and Ma Shang. Tang Jing's controlled rigidity suggests a narrative where her personal life was sacrificed, or perhaps violently interrupted, by her specialization. Her apartment, if glimpsed early on, would likely reflect this: minimalist, functional, devoid of personal clutter, a physical manifestation of her emotional containment. This mirrors the meticulous nature of high-level cryptography. Every extraneous detail is a potential vulnerability. Yang Mi excels at conveying this internal surveillance. Her character isn't just guarding national secrets. She's guarding herself from re-exposure to past hurt. Ma Shang's contrasting approach, the calculated ease, is a professional necessity, born of infiltration and psychological warfare. If Tang Jing is the fortress, Ma Shang is the Trojan horse. His charisma is a tool, yet the brief moments where that mask slips, perhaps when he catches Tang Jing's eye during a moment of crisis, reveal a shared language of experience that transcends professional reporting. Zhang Binbin's strength lies in playing characters navigating immense pressure while maintaining an outward facade of control, a trait that will make his inevitable struggle to reconcile his feelings for Tang Jing with the demands of their shared mission all the more potent. The series is setting up a classic espionage quandary. Can intimacy survive in an environment defined by necessary deception? The visible antagonists, the unseen forces operating in the dark web, are framed not merely as hackers, but as ideologically motivated saboteurs, suggesting the stakes are geopolitical as much as proprietary. The early sequence dedicated to tracking the initial breach likely features moments where the team is forced to analyze motive before method. This analytical depth is what separates good cyber thrillers from simple action fare. The inclusion of actors known for their gravitas, such as Shi Liang or Shi Jingming, in advisory or oversight roles, implies that every digital failure will be met with severe, high-level scrutiny, ratcheting up the professional pressure on the leads tenfold. Their characters represent the institutional memory and the rigid expectations of a system that cannot afford even minor missteps. Furthermore, the environment itself becomes a character, the headquarters of their specialized unit. Whether sleekly modern or deliberately retrofitted to appear innocuous, serves as a hermetically sealed world. The lighting choices, favoring blues and deep shadows during critical operational moments, underscore the isolation of these individuals. They are the unseen guardians, operating in the perpetual twilight between the exposed public sphere and the hidden digital battleground. The narrative promises a slow burn, where trust is the most valuable and least available commodity, making the inevitable friction between Tang Jing's methodical caution and Ma Shang's aggressive integration strategy the primary engine of dramatic engagement in the coming episodes. This initial installment successfully establishes that the core conflict will be a siege on two fronts: the external digital invasion and the internal siege on the protagonist's carefully constructed emotional defenses. The narrative structure introduced in the premiere strongly suggests an unfolding drama where technological prowess must constantly wrestle with deeply human frailties. The focus on Tangjing and Ma Shang's history implies that the mission's success might hinge less on the sophistication of their firewalls and more on their ability to communicate authentically under extreme duress, a scenario that demands high emotional intelligence alongside technical skill. The concept of Storm Eye itself hints at a central point of vulnerability, a key system or a critical piece of intelligence that both sides are aggressively trying to control or exploit. This center point will invariably force Tang Jing and Ma Shang into constant proximity, testing the boundaries they have so carefully erected around their past interactions. The supporting players, particularly those positioned within the command structure, are poised to become vital friction points. Actors like Ning Xin or Liao Jingsheng, if cast in roles of command, bring a natural authority that can challenge the autonomy of the field operatives. In cyber espionage narratives, it is often the superiors who misunderstand the fluid, rapidly evolving nature of the threat, issuing directives based on outdated protocols or political expediency. This clash between boots-on-the-ground intuition and bureaucratic rigidity is a powerful source of conflict, forcing Tang Jing and Ma Shang to make difficult choices between absolute adherence to orders and the necessary deviation required to save the day. We anticipate scenes where crucial decisions are made in tense, unauthorized moments, creating a layer of internal jeopardy for the leads. The introduction of the younger talent, such as Yi Daqian, often serves a dual purpose in these ensemble pieces. They represent the future of the field, but also the inexperience that the veterans must protect or rely upon. Their digital fluency might be superior, yet their lack of real-world operational trauma makes them susceptible to manipulation or burnout. This generational dynamic adds texture, illustrating the continuous recruitment and vetting process inherent in maintaining a national security apparatus dedicated to cutting-edge technology. The contrast between the seasoned, world-weary veterans and the eager, highly capable newcomers underscores the relentless pace of technological advancement and the constant need for fresh perspectives, even if those perspectives introduce new risks. Visually, the series seems committed to portraying the reality of modern espionage, a war fought in silent server rooms and glowing terminals rather than smoke-filled back alleys. The lingering shots on biometric scans, encrypted text scrolling at impossible speeds, and the meticulous organization of data centers reinforce the idea that the battleground is one of pure information control. This commitment to a sleek, contemporary aesthetic ensures that the audience feels the constant, low-level hum of digital crisis. The initial episode sets a high bar for maintaining this atmosphere, suggesting that any relaxation in the high-tech tension will be immediately punished by the narrative, ensuring that the protagonists and the audience remain perpetually on edge, waiting for the next invisible attack vector to manifest. The emotional stakes are subtly but significantly raised by the environment in which Tang Jing and Ma Shang must operate, which is one of mandated proximity. Their shared history, whatever its specifics, a failed mission, a personal parting, or a wartime bond, is now weaponized by their shared assignment. This necessity of collaboration forces moments of awkward intimacy, where professional protocols momentarily fail to mask deeper, unresolved currents. Tang Jing's characteristic defense mechanism, intellectual rigor, is likely to be the first line breached by Ma Shang's more fluid, emotionally intelligent approach. We see hints of this in the shared shorthand they employ, a private language of glances and coded responses that baffles their colleagues, yet proves indispensable during moments of crisis. Yang Mi's performance will rely heavily on portraying the micro struggles of maintaining professional distance. The flicker of recognition in her eyes when Ma Shang uses a particular tactic is more telling than any explicit dialogue regarding their past. Ma Shang, being the operative whose role likely involves deeper undercover work or more aggressive penetration of hostile systems, must constantly balance the need to trust Tang Jing with the operational requirement to be unpredictable. His actions might deliberately appear impulsive to outsiders, yet they are calculated to elicit a specific, predictable response from Tang Jing, testing her readiness under stress. Zhang Binbin's nuanced acting style allows him to navigate this tightrope walk convincingly, suggesting that his outward confidence is a necessary shell protecting him from the emotional fallout of their past entanglement. The series appears to leverage the audience's familiarity with espionage tropes, where past lovers or partners are forced back together. Yet it grounds this tension in the specific, unforgiving landscape of national cyber defense. The overarching theme, implicitly established, is that information warfare is fundamentally a war of human psychology. The external threat is merely the mechanism. The real drama lies in managing the internal team dynamics under the pressure of an invisible, omnipresent enemy. The presence of seasoned dramatic actors in authority roles serves to heighten this psychological realism. They are the embodiment of the institutional fear of failure, making the stakes personal for the protagonists who are always aware that any lapse in judgment, professional or personal, will be scrutinized by those veterans. The shadow cast by figures like Wang Dong or Shi Liang suggests that loyalty will be tested not just against the enemy, but against the internal demands of the agency itself. The series' aesthetic, prioritizing sleek, high-tech interiors, contrasted with moments of intense human vulnerability during breakthroughs or failures, underscores this dual reality. The digital landscape they traverse is clean and ordered, but the human cost of navigating it is messy and complex. Storm Eye promises to be a character study wrapped in a thriller's structure, using the high-stakes world of cybersecurity as the crucible to either mend or permanently shatter the fractured relationship between its two highly competent leads, while the fate of national security hangs delicately in the balance of their emotional equilibrium. The delicate dance between Tang Jing and Ma Shang, their professional synchronization, constantly undermined by the unresolved emotional history, forms the core dynamic that the series will evidently exploit for maximum dramatic impact. This inherent conflict suggests that the series will employ a structure where mission objectives serve as catalysts for personal confrontations. When Tang Jing is forced to rely on Ma Shang's unorthodox methods, or when Ma Shang needs Tang Jing's absolute precision under pressure, the resulting interactions will inevitably reveal fissures in their composure. Yang Mi's ability to convey profound thought behind a placid exterior suggests that every decision she makes in the field will be cross-referenced against her memories of Ma Shang, adding an extra unseen layer of calculation to her work. She is not just solving a coding problem, she is solving the Ma Shang problem simultaneously. Ma Shang's strategy, it seems, will involve gently chipping away at Tang Jing's defenses, perhaps leveraging shared memories or inside jokes that only they understand, creating moments of vulnerability that are both essential for their operational synergy and deeply dangerous to their professional cover. Jung Binbin's performance must navigate the fine line between calculated manipulation for the sake of the mission and genuine, resurfacing affection, a distinction that the audience, kept in the dark about the exact nature of their past, will constantly be trying to decipher. This ambiguity keeps the viewer invested, wondering if Ma Shang is truly reforming their bond or merely using familiarity as a tactical advantage. The narrative's commitment to the procedural aspects of cyber defense, as seen through the eyes of the supporting ensemble, serves to anchor the high-stakes personal drama in tangible reality. When Liu Ruilin or Daisy are depicted struggling with a newly emerging form of malware, their frustration provides a necessary counterpoint to the lead's complex emotional baggage. These supporting operatives represent the sheer workload and technical breadth of the threat. They are the operational reality against which the personal drama unfolds. The gravity implied by the veteran actors, such as She Liang, suggests that failure is not met with mere reprimand, but with profound systemic disappointment, reinforcing the idea that the protagonists are carrying the weight of the entire institution on their shoulders. Moreover, the visual language expands beyond mere coolness and shadows. There's a suggestion of the immense scale of the digital battlefield. We might see sequences where data breaches are visualized not just as abstract code, but as destructive forces tearing through meticulously constructed digital environments, providing a spectacular visual analog for the personal devastation that a betrayal or operational failure would inflict on Tang Jing and Ma Shang. Stormeye is meticulously crafting a world where professionalism is the highest virtue, yet it is human connection, the very thing they have suppressed, that will ultimately prove to be the key determinant of survival, both for their mission and for their fractured partnership. The integration of high-level technology with deeply ingrained human fallibility is the engine driving the unfolding narrative, suggesting that the series will consistently test the limits of compartmentalization. Tang Jing's dedication to structure, a necessary armor forged in the demanding environment suggested by Yang Mi's past successful portrayals of resilient female leads, means any deviation from protocol will register as a catastrophic failure, regardless of whether it leads to mission success. Her internal conflict will manifest as an obsessive need for verification, a reluctance to cede control to the less predictable Ma Shang, even when his instincts prove superior in the field. This rigidity is her shield against the emotional chaos that Ma Shang represents, the living, breathing reminder of a past she cannot fully erase while on active duty. Ma Shang, in contrast, embodies the necessary fluidity required for deep cover and unpredictable engagement. His charm, which we interpret as a carefully honed skill set, suggests a character who has mastered the art of seeming authentic. Jung Binbin's success often lies in portraying characters whose outward affability conceals underlying intensity, and here, that intensity will be directed toward navigating the operational minefield that is his renewed partnership with Tang Jing. He must constantly perform trust while simultaneously demanding it. The dramatic tension hinges on whether his performance eventually dissolves into genuine vulnerability, risking mission integrity for personal connection, or if the mission ultimately demands he sacrifice that potential connection for the sake of pure operational effectiveness. The structural pacing of the threat escalation, hinted at by the concerned glances of the senior staff like Wang Dong, suggests that the initial breach is just the tip of an iceberg. The threats will grow in sophistication, forcing the team to rely on unconventional, perhaps even ethically questionable methods. This moves the narrative beyond simple defense into the realm of counter-espionage and preemptive strikes. The seasoned character actors filling these authoritative roles guarantee that the pressure applied to the protagonists will feel both bureaucratic and existential. They are the institutional memory aware of past failures, making them unforgiving judges of the lead's current performance. Visually, the series maintains a commitment to illustrating the psychological toll of digital warfare. When the team finally manages to isolate an adversary or decrypt a complex layer of encryption, the moment of triumph will likely be juxtaposed immediately with evidence of the adversary's continued unseen influence elsewhere. This editorial choice reinforces the core idea. In the world of cybersecurity, victory is never final, only a brief lull before the next surge. The setting, the secure facility, becomes a psychological pressure cooker where the highly advanced tools meant to protect them simultaneously isolate them from the outside world, intensifying the claustrophobia and making reliance on the few trusted colleagues, particularly the complex dynamic between Tang Jing and Ma Shang, absolutely critical for survival. The series deepens its psychological scrutiny by positioning Tang Jing and Ma Shang not just as colleagues reunited, but as two halves of a necessary yet inherently unstable operational whole. Tang Jing's meticulous control, so evident in her bearing and precise execution, serves as a direct counterpoint to the chaotic, unpredictable nature of the cyber threats they face. Her career, often involving navigating rigid institutional structures, has taught her that order is the only bulwark against disaster. This makes any reliance on Ma Shang's more improvisational genius a source of intense internal debate for her. We anticipate moments where she consciously overrides her own better judgment, purely because his understanding of the adversary's psychological profile, likely informed by their shared past, is superior. Young Mi's strength in portraying steely competence allows the audience to feel the sheer mental effort required for Tang Jing to continually wrestle with her own emotional history, manifesting in her professional choices. Ma Shang operates under the guise of effortless capability, a facade that must be convincing enough to fool both the enemy and his own superiors, who remain suspicious of their rapid rekindling of rapport. His ability to mimic fluency in different operational languages, both technical and social, is his primary weapon. Zhang Binbin excels at conveying a character who is always scanning the room, always calculating the acceptable risk margins. In the context of this partnership, his calculated risk often involves pushing Tang Jing just hard enough to elicit a genuine reaction, a moment of unscripted humanity that might unlock a critical piece of operational insight. The audience is left waiting for the moment where Ma Shang's professional veneer cracks, revealing whether his pursuit of Tang Jing is still rooted in genuine feeling or has been entirely subsumed by the necessities of the mission, a defining uncertainty for the series. The broader organizational structure, featuring seasoned performers like Wang Dong and Shi Liang, functions as the institutional conscience, sternly enforcing accountability. These figures represent the high political stakes involved. The failure to secure national digital assets is not just a technical mishap, but a significant geopolitical embarrassment. This external pressure forces Tang Jing and Ma Shang into a defensive posture, even within their own ranks, fostering secrecy around their personal dynamic. Any mistake stemming from their unresolved issues will be magnified by the unforgiving gaze of command, amplifying the tension during collaborative work sessions, where every data point discussed is weighted by potential career or national risk. Visually, the series emphasizes the claustrophobia of intense focus. Scenes of intense decryption or surveillance are framed tightly, using shallow depth of field to blur the background, effectively isolating the protagonists in their digital bubble. This visual technique mirrors their professional isolation. They inhabit a space accessible only to the elite few. Yet, paradoxically, they are never truly alone due to the pervasive threat of infiltration. The promise of Stormi lies in its exploration of how well human connection can survive when the environment demands absolute, calculated isolation, suggesting that the true vulnerability in their defense system might not be a flawed algorithm, but an unguarded human heart. The exploration of trust as the paramount, yet most precarious asset in the digital espionage theater deepens as the series moves forward. Tang Jing's reliance on established protocols, a hallmark of her disciplined approach honed through years in high-pressure environments, inevitably clashes with the necessity of embracing Ma Xiang's more intuitive leaps of faith. This tension isn't merely philosophical, it translates into real-time operational friction. For example, in a sequence where they must decide whether to follow a lead generated by an unverified source, a source Ma Xiang may know personally from their shared history, Tang Jing's hesitation will be palpable. Yang Mi skillfully communicates this internal struggle, the part of her trained to accept no variables, fighting against the deep-seated, almost instinctual knowledge that Ma Xiang's intuition, however flawed professionally, often cuts through obfuscation. Her reluctance is rooted in self-preservation, recognizing that every act of trust towards him is an admission of vulnerability to the system watching them. Ma Xiang's cultivation of calculated ambiguity remains his most effective tool. He is the operative fluent in the art of necessary deception, constantly weaving narratives that serve the mission while simultaneously confusing the boundaries of his true intentions towards Tang Jing. Zhang Binbin brings an appealing dexterity to this role, ensuring that even when Ma Xiang is clearly manipulating a situation, there remains an undercurrent of sincerity directed specifically at Tang Jing. This duality is crucial. If the audience is certain he is only playing a part, the emotional payoff of their potential reconciliation is diminished. Instead, the script demands that we question which version of Ma Xiang, the dedicated operative or the unresolved partner, is currently in control. His moments of necessary retreat into professional distance will feel like mini betrayals to Tang Jing, fueling the cyclical nature of their strained relationship. The institutional oversight, personified by the senior cast such as Wang Dong and Wang Xiao, is poised to become more directly antagonistic. Their concern is not just about catching the hacker, but about maintaining the agency's reputation and preventing leaks that could expose sensitive methodologies. We anticipate scenes where operational victories are met not with praise, but with stern questioning about the methods used, particularly those employed by Ma Xiang. This environment where even success must be justified against rigid ethical or procedural lines ensures that the protagonists are constantly working under intense scrutiny from both the external threat and their internal structure. The involvement of veteran actors guarantees that these supervisory roles will carry significant dramatic weight, representing the unyielding weight of institutional expectation. The visual language is evolving to reflect this internal pressure cooker. Beyond the cold glow of the monitors, there will be heightened focus on the surveillance apparatus within their own secure facility. A recurring visual motif might be the use of reflective surfaces, glass partitions, polished metal desks that momentarily capture Tangjing or Ma Shang looking unguarded, only for them to snap back into focus when they realize they are being observed, often by their own security systems. This reinforces the narrative's central thesis. In this world of ultimate digital defense, the most difficult perimeter to secure remains the human mind. The series is skillfully setting up a scenario where the only person Tang Jing can fully rely on might be the one person she is professionally and emotionally least equipped to trust unconditionally. The escalating complexity of the cyber threat demands a corresponding escalation in the emotional vulnerability of the operatives, creating a pressure cooker scenario where personal history becomes a liability that must be neutralized for the sake of the mission. Tang Jing's dedication to flawless execution, which has defined her career, is being systematically challenged by the ambiguity inherent in working with Ma Shang again. Every piece of intelligence they uncover is filtered through the lens of their past shared trauma or commitment, making objective analysis incredibly difficult. Yang Mi's portrayal excels at showcasing this strain. The physical stiffness when Ma Shang breaches her personal space, even during unnecessary data transfer, speaks volumes about the deeply ingrained habit of self-protection that operational demands are forcing her to shed. Her internal monologue, if audible, would be a constant battle between the trained analyst and the woman who once shared vulnerabilities with the man now standing opposite her. Ma Shang's strategy leans heavily on exploiting this known history, transforming their former intimacy into a tool of operational efficiency. He must maintain a believable operational persona while simultaneously providing just enough emotional resonance to keep Tang Jing engaged and slightly off balance. Zhang Binbin's performance is masterful in its subtlety here. The fleeting moments where his professional mask slips, perhaps a shared, knowing grimace at a superior's obtuse instruction, are vital, as they offer Tang Jing the only moments of authentic connection in an otherwise sterile environment. The audience recognizes that Ma Shang is not simply regaining ground with Tang Jing. He is strategically utilizing their shared emotional infrastructure to build tactical superiority against the external threat. This creates a perilous situation where the line between necessary operational synchronization and dangerous emotional regression is constantly being tested. The institutional skepticism surrounding their rapid realignment, likely voiced by figures played by the veteran ensemble such as Shi Liang or Shi Jingming, introduces a critical layer of external sabotage. These senior figures do not trust expediency, they trust documented procedure. Therefore, every successful, unconventional maneuver by Tang Jing and Ma Shang is immediately viewed with suspicion, suggesting an internal investigation is likely running parallel to the external threat neutralization. This forces the leads to operate not just against the hackers, but against the clock of internal review, demanding airtight operational security that is almost impossible to maintain given the emotional charge between them. The weight of organizational failure, which these veterans personify, acts as a constant, invisible antagonist, pressing down on the protagonists. The visual texture of the series further reinforces this theme of hidden conflict. Scenes depicting their data analysis now likely incorporate overlays where code streams are juxtaposed with fragmented memories, visualized as ghostly, translucent imagery overlapping the screens. This technique visually confirms that the past is not merely a memory, but an active, interfering variable in their present calculations. The meticulous, clean lines of the command center serve as a stark backdrop to the messy, unresolved human drama unfolding within it. Stormy is expertly using the language of technological thriller to frame a deeply personal drama about reconciliation, betrayal, and the immense cost of maintaining absolute control when true effectiveness might require complete, frightening surrender to human connection. The ongoing tension between professional mandate and personal history is ingeniously mirrored in the series' use of specialized terminology and operational jargon. For Tang Jing, every line of code, every successful firewall implementation represents a victory for logic over the chaos embodied by her past with Ma Shang. Yang Mi conveys this through an almost physical rejection of ambiguity. Her dialogue is clipped, precise, favoring factual declaration over speculative analysis. This contrasts sharply with the necessary vagueness Ma Shang must employ. His reports often read like carefully constructed riddles, designed to satisfy command scrutiny, while subtly signaling true intent or tactical developments only Tang Jing can decode. This reliance on subtext creates an echo chamber between them, isolating them further from their colleagues, including the technically adept but emotionally less burdened supporting cast like Liu Ruilin and Dai Si, whose struggles with the evolving threat landscape are purely technical rather than deeply relational. Ma Shang's character arc, even in these early episodes, suggests a man deeply embedded in roles, struggling to recall his authentic self amidst constant performance. Zhang Binbin must continually project an image of unwavering confidence, yet the series subtly reveals the toll this takes, perhaps through moments of exhaustion, glimpsed only when he believes he is unobserved, or a flicker of genuine pain when Tang Jing erects a particularly firm professional barrier. His approach to their shared objective is to break down Tang Jing's defenses not through force, but through relentless, necessary proximity, making it impossible for her to maintain the illusion of purely professional interaction. This forces the audience to confront the uncomfortable reality that sometimes the fastest route to saving the mission involves resurrecting the very emotional connections deemed too dangerous to maintain. The strategic placement of experienced actors in advisory roles, such as Wang Dong or Wang Xiao, ensures that the narrative maintains its high stakes without descending into mere procedural exposition. These characters serve as the collective memory of the agency, aware of past operational casualties, and their skepticism toward the renewed partnership is a constant external pressure point. They represent the system's inherent conservatism, a preference for predictable failure over unpredictable success. This forces Tang Jing and Ma Shang into a state of perpetual operational self-justification, where every decision must not only be correct, but must appear to follow established, time-tested doctrine, even when they know better. The visual storytelling effectively emphasizes this psychological siege. The lighting in their immediate workspaces often seems too bright, almost clinical, suggesting an environment where everything is exposed, yet nothing is truly clear. When they review evidence of the external threat, digital artifacts left by the enemy, the camera lingers not on the complexity of the code, but on the human reaction to it. The slight tremor in a hand hovering over a keyboard, the involuntary intake of breath. Stormy promises a deep dive into the reality that the most sophisticated security measures are ultimately reliant on the imperfect, emotionally volatile human element, and that the true battlefield is the precarious space between two people who know each other's weaknesses intimately. The core conflict is expertly framed by the series' commitment to showing that in the high-stakes theater of cyber warfare, Technological defense is merely the scaffolding for a far more fragile structure: human psychology. Tang Jing's meticulous reliance on empirical data and structured response is not just professionalism. It's a desperate attempt to impose order on a world that proved chaotic once before, likely involving Ma Shang. Yang Mi conveys this internal vigilance through a stillness that seems almost brittle, suggesting that any sudden movement or unexpected breach in her composure will result in a catastrophic internal collapse. The very act of sharing a terminal with Ma Shang demands a profound, perhaps unwilling, act of faith from her, a momentary suspension of her belief that control equals safety. Ma Shang, conversely, weaponizes his own perceived emotional instability. His practiced ease serves as both an asset and a calculated liability. Zhang Binbin allows us to see the genuine exhaustion beneath the charm, suggesting that maintaining this level of operational deception, especially while confronting the reality of Tang Jing's tightly guarded state, requires immense psychological stamina. His strategy appears to be one of strategic emotional infiltration. He needs to make her feel the connection because the threats they face are designed to exploit emotional weak points. If he can create a fissure of doubt or longing in Tang Jing, he can force her out of her rigid analytical patterns and into a more adaptive, riskier mode of operation, a mode she shares with him. The hierarchy established by the senior team adds bureaucratic hazard to the already perilous mission. Figures like Wang Dong and Shi Liang are not just looking for a successful outcome, they are looking for traceable compliance. Their scrutiny forces Tang Jing and Ma Shang to develop complex, layered operational reports. One version for the command structure that adheres strictly to procedure, and another, far more honest version, communicated solely between themselves, often through nonverbal cues during briefings. This dual reporting system heightens the sense of paranoia. They are constantly guarding their operational narrative from their own allies, ensuring that any personal dynamic that aids the mission remains invisible to those who might exploit it or shut it down entirely. Visually, the series deepens the metaphor of the digital environment as a psychological mirror. When a major data stream is visualized, it's not just complex graphics, it's often rendered in a way that mimics the flow of blood or neurological pathways, suggesting that the national infrastructure they defend is a living, breathing entity vulnerable to the same psychological attacks that affect the protagonists. Furthermore, the series utilizes sound design brilliantly. The only consistent audible element during moments of high tension is the subtle, pervasive hum of the server banks, a relentless reminder that the battle is ongoing, silent, and ever-present, drowning out the possibility of genuine, unmonitored human conversation. Storm Eye is clearly building towards a climax where the only way to defeat the external digital enemy is to finally, fully expose the internal emotional truth between its two deeply compromised protagonists. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the Real Threat channel. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. Today, we are going to be discussing the film located at DLA, Ali kan filmen kitaiske. Filmers papkan, 3 full, Bao Feng Yan, Noladin, Storm Eye, Noladin Yang Mi, Zhang Binbin, Liu Ruilin, Dai Se, Wang Dong, Wang Xiao, Shi Liang, Shi Jingming, Zhang Shen, Zhu Xin, Liao Jingsheng, Yi Daqian. Yo-Yo Duba Yo-Yo television series exclusive, 720p H.264, MP4. The opening scenes immediately plunge us into the high-stakes world of corporate espionage and cutting-edge cybersecurity. We meet the protagonists, individuals deeply embedded in this shadowy conflict, whose professional lives are as intense as their personal struggles. One key figure, a brilliant but perhaps emotionally guarded security expert, is introduced through a tense operation. This character, much like the disciplined roles often played by Yang Mi in her varied filmography, exudes a quiet competence that masks deep underlying commitment. The narrative establishes the central conflict early on. A powerful technology firm is under relentless attack by sophisticated foreign entities seeking to steal invaluable intellectual property, specifically a next-generation detection system. The initial tension revolves around a critical security breach. We see the team mobilizing, displaying the kind of synchronized action one might expect from operatives trained under rigorous government oversight, reminiscent of the precision demanded in many high-budget Chinese action dramas. Zhang Binbin's character, often portraying intense, focused partners in on-screen romances, here serves as the necessary operational counterpart to the lead, bringing a different, perhaps more grounded, expertise to the fieldwork. Their dynamic, even in these early professional encounters, hints at a past connection or a necessary reliance on one another that transcends mere partnership. As the investigation deepens, the characters are forced to confront layers of deceit. The stolen technology isn't just data. It represents national security interests. This emphasis on patriotic duty and technological sovereignty is a common thread in contemporary Chinese cinema, grounding the personal stakes within a broader societal context. The espionage is depicted not just through digital maneuvering, but through physical surveillance and careful deduction, drawing on classic spy thriller tropes, but updating them with modern technological jargon. We see flashbacks, or perhaps carefully curated pieces of information that begin to illuminate the personal histories of the team members. Their dedication to this work often stems from personal loss or a deeply ingrained sense of justice. The film takes time to show the toll this life takes, the constant vigilance, the strained relationships outside the professional bubble. The intensity required to maintain this level of focus mirrors the rigorous demands placed on actors who transition seamlessly between commercial hits and more serious, demanding roles, requiring immense mental stamina. A significant part of the plot involves tracking down the mole within their own organization or a closely allied entity. This internal betrayal adds a layer of paranoia that heightens the drama. Every interaction becomes suspect. The supporting cast, featuring established actors like Shi Liang and Wang Dong, brings gravitas to the procedural elements, portraying the senior leadership who must balance operational success with political maneuvering. Their presence anchors the narrative, ensuring that the pursuit of the stolen code remains tethered to real-world consequences. The climax builds as the team zeroes in on the perpetrators overseas. It is a race against time, complicated by the fact that the attackers are not mere amateurs, but are backed by substantial resources and high-level intelligence. The final confrontation, whether digital or physical, is framed as a triumph of dedication and superior intellect over brute force and greed. The resolution, while satisfying the immediate need to recover the technology and expose the conspiracy, leaves the audience with a sense of the ongoing nature of this silent war. A suggestion that for these dedicated professionals, the storm eye is never truly calm. Their commitment remains, a quiet promise to protect what is theirs. The initial skirmishes against the unseen enemy establish a rhythm of near misses and frantic problem-solving. Yang Mi's character, the lead operative, navigates the digital battlefield with an almost surgical precision. Her past, hinted at through brief, sharp recollections suggests rigorous training, possibly in some specialized elite academy, the kind of background that forges resilience